has been a lot of misinformation about grounding. And I don't think that it's necessarily intentional misinformation. More than anything, I think that we try to give words and descriptions to things. And as we do that, they get both more specific and more vague. So a lot of people end up thinking like, oh, I'm not doing this right. I must be really messed up if I keep doing these practices that I've been told to do, if I keep buying all of these tools that I'm told are supposed to help me, and still this is how I feel. And so today's conversation is getting more clarity on what grounding and mindfulness actually are, especially in the scope or the lens of reclaiming yourself as a woman, of figuring out who you are and what humanity, what life means for you, especially as a woman. There's been so much divide in the men and women's space. And, I'm a big advocate for the masculine and feminine being in all of us. We all hold aspects that are both masculine and feminine. So when we look at the feminine or female woman um, space, when we look at that lens, we find a lot of areas that we get divided. And then it's beautiful that more science is coming out around women's nervous systems and how we just physiologically do not function the same as men. And with that in mind, that's where I want to take this conversation today. So today we'll go over things like what grounding is not and what grounding really is, and how you can utilize these understandings to feel more grounded and capable on a daily basis. This isn't about, carving out 3 hours in your day to try to do more practices, to spend a bunch of money on more tools. That's not going to help anybody. And more often than not, when you say, oh, now I need to come up with all of this time, that's more stressful. And you're going to feel less grounded. You're going to feel less stable, less secure. Your brain is going to be going all over the place. That's not mindfulness. And if we look at it in buying tools, all of these things, they're so much commercialized. You need to buy, these specific crystals. Now, I have my hematite ring. I love this because I like the sensation on my hand. But do you need a hematite ring to ground properly? Absolutely not. Do you need specific crystals or a grounding mat or there's just so many things that I see in the spaces that people say you need when really all you need is to come back to yourself. So, first of all, grounding is not suppressing your emotions. I hear that, and it's not said directly. A lot of people will say, oh, you're not calm right now, or you need to calm down. And so internally we say, I must not be grounded. I must be unstable right now, especially if you have a history of trauma where you're in the position to need to keep other people happy in order for you to stay safe. And so as that becomes internalized and we go throughout our day as children, as teenagers, and then as adults, we come into this space of, ooh, I'm feeling elevated. I'm feeling angry. Maybe I'm feeling sad, betrayed. There are a lot of emotions that are mixed. So I love this. If you get into mixed emotions, I have a chart that I keep up in my house. And whenever somebody's having a really big emotion, myself included, we go over to the chart and we say, okay, what is this first feeling that I'm experiencing? Now, what might be under it? And oftentimes, if you're feeling really angry, it might be because you're betrayed. And even deeper than that, it might be because you're sad. So if you're feeling unstable, if you have these big emotions coming up, the last thing that you need to do is say, I need to calm down. Now, do you want to get yourself into a headspace, into a situation where you can communicate effectively? Absolutely. Big breaths help. Taking a moment to pause. You don't want to say something out of anger because you're feeling big emotions, but you most certainly don't want to just shove them in a box and put them in the back of that mental closet where the little gremlins inside are later going to bust out and have multiplied because they haven't been fed, so to speak. And now they're taking over your entire life. You're certainly not going to feel grounded in that situation. So, in suppressing the emotions, you're not getting any closer to being grounded. You're actually putting yourself in that fawn state, which feels productive in the moment. It might feel helpful because other people aren't yelling at you. You're feeling safer because you're suppressing your emotions. But again, in doing that, you're erasing yourself. How many people are in your life because they think that you're just the calm, easygoing one? You always make them feel so good when they're around you. And that's beautiful, right? Like, I don't want people to be uncomfortable around me, but I'm surely not going to keep my mouth shut if they say something that I don't agree with. I will communicate it effectively and respectfully because they're allowed to have their own opinions. But like, if somebody says something intentionally, like, just mean, for you to just bite your tongue and say, I need to stay calm. How does that sit with you? It doesn't feel good. I've never been in a situation in my life where I thought to myself, I'm just going to let them walk all over me, and that's actually my preferred place to be. There have been times, certainly, that I have kept my mouth shut, that I wasn't sure how to communicate, that I thought I might be overreacting. And there are levels of that. You're not overreacting. Maybe it's a wound from when you were a child and you never got to communicate that. You didn't get to stand up for yourself, whatever the case was. And now that you're an adult, it feels huge. So you're not overreacting by speaking up for yourself, by advocating for yourself, but you are reacting. So grounding is not about suppressing that. It's about being able to respond from a place where you can reflect on why these emotions are coming up, what has to do with the person saying them or doing the action that's triggered you, and what has to do with something going on inside of you. And then how do you respond to that situation or event, rather than just saying, I'm probably overreacting, I'm just going to go calm down for a while. Now, are there times where going to calm down is effective? Absolutely. And again, we communicate. Especially if you have like an avoidant attachment style, and you get into an argument with your partner and you say, like, I need to go calm down, say that to them. You know that you're feeling elevated. You know that you're not going to be responding from a heart-centered place. That's beautiful. Like, that level of awareness is phenomenal. So say to them, hey, I need a minute. Give me 10 minutes to go, get my head around my thoughts, to come back into a place where I can respond to you and have a conversation with you. That's grounding. Okay, that's centering yourself. And that is so much better than the self-erasure of just, I'm not going to bring it up. There's, I think it's the Gottmans talk about in relationship that most relationships don't die because of the big fights. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, where things get missed. You don't speak up for yourself because you don't want to be perceived as XYZ. And so you think that you're being calm. You think that you're being easy. You think that you're being grounded. And then you snap. Or you spend years and years and years being the calm one. And one day you wake up and you think, what do I even like? All of those ways that you're hiding who you are is not the same as being grounded. Another misconception that I hear is that grounding, the act of grounding or becoming grounded, means sitting still, specifically in really uncomfortable postures and often for a long time, but even like sitting cross-legged. Not everybody's hips are super open to that. Or sitting on your knees, whether or not you're on your feet, dealer's choice. But I know for my body that if I sit on my knees too long, like my feet are going to go to sleep. I don't want that. So grounding doesn't mean you have to sit in a specific position. And more relevantly, grounding in women's work is about movement. I think men have a beautiful ability to be strong and stable and still. Does that mean they have to? Absolutely not. But traditional meditation techniques of sitting still in a specific position or holding a certain mudra are all made for male bodies. Women's energy moves best when we are in flow, when we are moving. So if I have something coming up within me, let's say I'm sad, the best thing I can do for myself is honoring those emotions through movement, whether that's dancing, swaying, just hugging myself while I rock when I'm sad. Or if I'm angry, to move through the emotions of anger. I'm not going to go punch something, but to move in a way that honors how your body and your system are feeling that anger, are feeling those emotions. Again, not suppressing them and moving into them so that you can move through them. That's what releases them. I see men who have this uncanny, innate ability. I honestly love seeing this, but a guy gets mad and they're like, I'm gonna go kick this rock. And there can be repercussions to things like that. There are safe ways to express anger where you're getting it out of your body physically, where you're not harming another person, but you're also not harboring it. You're not holding on to it. And I've had a conversation where I talked about integration and the different aspects of healing work in the body. And one of those, I was talking about how the fascia, your literal system of connective tissue that's in every part of your body. When we don't move, when we hold on to something, that fascia will constrict and it'll lock you down that way. So to say, and this is a great example, in depression, when you're feeling depressed, do you ever see a depressed person that isn't masking it really well? Shoulders back, shoulders down, neck long, and just the biggest smile on their face. And when they walk with ease. I've never seen somebody who's depressed move that way. If nothing else, even if they're hiding it really well, I see them stiff. they are at least a little bit rounded over and collapsed. That's the body's expression of that energy. And so when you're grounding, to think that you can continue to hold this in your body and that it's not going to stay that way, that's one of the biggest things that I see throughout what you can consider healing work, is that if you're not also addressing the body and bringing it out of those patterns, the emotional patterns are going to stick, and vice versa. So when we're grounding, when we have an emotion that's coming up, when we're feeling very elevated, whether that's a high or, anger, grief, rage, all of those things move really well through the body. And it's very specific on how your body moves with them. And once you've moved them through the body, that is an excellent space to finally say, like, maybe you do end up crying because you've moved it out and it's no longer being held there. And that's when you're feeling more grounded, more stable, more capable. So, and that's, that brings me to grounding meaning calm. Grounding does not necessarily mean that you're calm. I can be sad. I can be angry. I can have all of the feelings in the myriad spectrum of feelings that exist. And so can you. Everybody can. And still be centered enough to handle whatever life throws at me. I can't tell you how many times there's been some kind of emergency in my life. Either somebody's injured, an animal's injured, something big happens in the world around me. And so like my fight or flight responses are going. Like there's no lie about that. The adrenaline is coursing through my veins. But I've done enough practice grounding to stay centered, to acknowledge that those emotions are there and still function. And that is the biggest truth about grounding. Not, can I stay calm in this moment? Somebody's attacking you. Can you stay calm? That's not what this is about. There's an emergency and somebody's injured. Can you stay calm? No. Can you acknowledge that the emotions exist and still stay focused and still be able to take action so that you aren't getting knocked over by your body and nervous system's biological response that is meant to keep you alive? And again, not suppressing the emotions. They're there. You acknowledge them. Maybe it's not that exact right time to acknowledge that you're feeling angry or that you're scared out of your mind. You've got to handle a situation. That is being grounded. And I know often as women, many of us are mothers. When you've got a kiddo who is like, they're having their own meltdown, they're relying on your nervous system to be centered enough for them to know that it's actually okay. And that doesn't mean talking to them a bunch and lecturing the 2-year-old about why they need to calm down. You mirror it. You be the center. You be the tree. Now, trees are incredible. I especially love palm trees for this example. So I don't know if you know anything about palm trees. Palm trees are not a hardwood. They're more like a fiber. And the same goes for sunflowers. So they're able to sway in the wind because their root grows really deep into the ground. And their fibers are constantly getting little micro tears that then heal in a way that allows them to be flexible. So those hurricane force winds can try their darndest to blow them over, but they've spent so much time growing deep into the ground and being able to handle it that they're just kind of like, yep, this is happening, and I'm going to come right back up. Now, again, that doesn't mean suppressing your emotions so that you get walked over. If somebody is literally attacking you, there are ways to go about getting yourself out of that situation. I will never say just accept bad treatment. Never. But I will say, if you've got a kid who's dealing with their emotions, yelling at them back isn't going to help anything. Heck, yelling at an adult back isn't going to help anything. So how can you respond? You can respond from a grounded, centered place with loving boundaries. I will not tolerate you talking to me like that. I won't. With a kid, would you like some time to calm down? I'm here if you need something. Don't get them to lecture them. You don't need to go send them to their room. I'm here. I'm still not going to get yelled at. I'm not going to let you slap me, kick me because you're 4 years old doesn't mean you get to hurt me. But I'm here, and I'm not going to lose myself because you're having big emotions. That's when you know that you're grounding. And grounding isn't going to happen all the time. I don't know one person in the world that is 100% grounded 100% of the time. Like, for somebody to say that they are, I don't know, maybe a Buddhist monk that nobody has ever talked to because they're like living out in the mountains away from everything. But even then, like, if they're away from everything in that regard, if they are always in a place where they can focus on themselves, what triggers are they experiencing from their external lives that are applying that outward pressure for them to grow? Ram Dass is a great example. So he passed a couple years ago, but he had a lot of really beautiful viewpoints. I think he was a very loving person, and I loved listening to his lectures. And at one point during one of them, he had mentioned how he would go to meditate and kind of be alone in the mountains and sit with his guru and practice being all love and light. And then he would come home and his dad would call him his given name, Richard. And he would say something about the way he looked. And Ram Dass would say explicitly, man, like, he's really messing with my whole love and light vibe. Escapism to avoid those triggers does not mean that you're grounded. It means that you're avoiding them. So when we can experience outward triggers, we have a chance to grow. We have a chance to recenter. We have a chance to notice how we're feeling in our bodies. And that's one of the biggest aspects of grounding that I love so much. Our bodies, both men and women, masculine, feminine, we all hold so much wisdom in our bodies. But oftentimes we are conditioned to not listen, especially from the time we're little kids. Like boys and girls both. They fall down, they get a scrape on their knee, they start crying. That's natural. It hurt. And so many of us are told, brush it off, shake it off. You're fine. Really? Because I don't feel fine right now. Like, I hear you, but this scrape on my knee hurts. So many adults tell children what to think, how to feel, what they do and don't actually experience. And now that we are the adults, we have to sort that out for ourselves. And we have to be able to reflect on that so that we can respond. But if we're avoiding all the external triggers, we're not getting to know ourselves any better. We're getting to know a very small picture. if you were to, say, lift a weight, and you lifted a 2-pound weight, 20 pounds every day for the rest of your life, you would know with the utmost of certainty that you could lift a 2-pound weight for 20 times. Wonderful. But that 25th time, that 30th time, could you do that? Or would that stress feel like it's breaking you? We have to be stressed. And grounding is coming back from those stress points to go out to experience the pressure, to learn how to grow from it, to respond to it, and then come back to that center point of stability. Another myth that I hear is that grounding means emptying your mind. Like if you think of meditation, so many meditation teachers, and I've taken meditation classes, tell you sit still, quiet the mind. Now, two things as women, again, first, we don't sit still well. Maybe we'll, relax, absolutely. But we've always got things going on in the mind, emotions, to-do lists, whatever the case might be. Instead of being told to sit still when our bodies are meant to move the energy and then to empty the mind, that's a paradox, my friend. We cannot empty our mind. That is not being grounded. When it comes to the mind, we notice the thoughts. Are they taking us somewhere we want to go? Are we reflecting on something that we just haven't given ourselves the space because we've been doing the to-do list, because we've been managing other people's emotional loads, our children's, our partners, our bosses? Have we had the space to genuinely reflect on what's coming up in our mind? Sometimes it's just something that needs to be heard within ourselves, from ourselves. Sometimes it's a spiral of negative self-talk and conditioning that we don't want to experience, but we are beating ourselves up over. So when you can reflect on that, when you notice it, then you can start saying, okay, I hear this. Excuse me. I hear that I'm feeling this way again. I hear that there's this message that I used to believe, that I don't want to believe, that somebody once told me and just stuck with me forever. Why am I holding on to that so much? There's a time for affirmations and there's a time for acknowledgement. Because you can paint something a different color, but it's still the color that it is. That affirmation is pretty. It might be something that you want to believe, but if you haven't listened to the emotions and what's going on in the mind behind that belief, then when you try to sit down and calm your mind, it's going to yell at you because you're not listening to it. So when we ground, when we're feeling elevated, when we sit down to meditate, when we move to meditate, whether it's dancing or walking or lifting weights, to each their own. We're all so unique. Sometimes I meditate washing dishes, doing a crochet project, whatever it is for you. When those emotions come up, when those thoughts come up, it's not about catching them and then trying to chuck them out the back door and never have to deal with them again. You notice them. Is this one that I actually believe? Is this one that is no longer serving me? Am I just running on a spiral loop of a million thoughts at 20 billion miles an hour because I haven't been listening to myself? What can you not notice? Now, I do love the practice of letting the thoughts drift by. Maybe you have been overthinking. Maybe you need to just let your body and your mind know that you're safe to let things go for a minute. So if you want to, sit down and quiet your mind, not empty it. Can't do that. Doesn't happen. You want to quiet the mind though. And you can notice those thoughts and then let them drift away on a cloud, or imagine them like a stick or a leaf floating down the river, and you just watch them pass by and you go, oh yeah. Now if you think of that concept and actually watching the clouds fly by or float by, do you ignore the cloud altogether, or do you notice it and then just it passes? Let's say you're driving down the road and there are trees going by your window. When you're watching the trees, you don't stare at a tree and then watch it endlessly, because you're driving. I hope you're not. But when you look at the tree, you watch it for a little bit and then you look at the next tree, and there's not emotion tied to looking at that tree. We're just noticing. And the same goes with quieting the mind. We notice the thoughts and we can choose, oh, this one feels important. Maybe I'll come back to this one later. Right now, I want to get out of the stories. Right now, I want to center myself. Right now, I don't want to overthink. So when we're taking those moments to say, oh, and I'm going to let this one go right now. We don't have to empty out anything. Our minds are full and constantly firing, constantly figuring things out. And that's beautiful. It means we're alive. Now, the next misconception that I hear is that, again, grounding means that you get instantly calm. You can take a big breath and then you're good. Now, if we look at this physiologically, right, like on a biological level, let's say you get upset by something, you get angry, and in that anger, you receive you receive chemicals from your brain in your body. They're preparing you. In the case of anger, fight or flight. So when that anger is producing chemicals in your body, preparing you to either fight or run away, you can't just take a big breath and think that all of those chemicals that are in your literal bloodstream are going to go away. Taking a breath is what pauses, it disconnects, it interrupts that signal from our more primitive brain so that we can then allow blood to come back to the prefrontal cortex, where we can actually make conscious, considered actions. So again, like that, I'm not reacting, I'm responding. There's a saying that I've practiced. I've been married for a very long time. And one of my favorite practices in my marriage that we both use is when you're feeling elevated, first of all, take a breath. Secondly, don't say the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe don't even say the second. When you take that breath, notice what the first thing is, chuck it out. How can you say the second or third thing? That's more accurate because it's not a reaction. You're not being defensive. When you think about that second or third thing, I can guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it's a more heart-centered response. It doesn't mean you're going to be less hurt by the other person's actions or what they said. It doesn't mean that the emotions are going to go away. You're not just going to be calm in the face of disrespect, but you can be more centered in yourself. to say, you know, that person said someone shitty or said something shitty. And that's more of a reflection of them than me, because they could have said the same thing with respect and kindness and love. And the same goes for you. Ladies, women, I love you. I am a girl's girl and a man's girl. I love humanity. I respect them, every one of you, and I am here to lovingly call you out. There are times that you will say some shit because you're feeling self-righteous, because you're feeling like somebody wronged you and they deserve this, whatever the case might be. I guarantee you, if you can take a breath and say that third thing rather than that response that's a reaction, your nervous system will thank you. Your relationship will thank you. We all can do better, and we all need to do better. There is no reason in anybody's life that it is justified to be intentionally hurtful. There's a great meme that I saw the other day. It's like being on a healing process, and it's a woman who was bit by a snake. And she was like, I understand, she's talking to the snake, I understand that evolution, kind of put you in this position, and I understand why you bit me, but also that freaking hurt, and screw you. Like, it's the same thing. Don't just accept disrespect. Don't just accept somebody being intentionally rude. But violence begets violence. If somebody that you love, whether it's a parent, a family member, a significant other, a child, if somebody that you love says something or does something that hurts you, reflect on why that hurt you. More often than not, it's a story that you've been told, not the actual situation. But sometimes it is the actual situation. And in those moments, that's a reflection of what's going on with them. But for you to stand up because you're feeling self-righteous, you're feeling justified, you want to be vindicated, and then come at them, that's not going to help anything. And you're certainly not going to feel good about it. There's not been, especially in my early 20s, when I was getting upset with my partner because I didn't feel heard, I'm sure that I said things that later I regretted. Can I remember them in this moment? No. But I'm sure that I did. I fully own that. And I spend a lot of time making sure that I'm not erasing myself, but I am learning to communicate in ways that are authentic and emote care for my partner. And it has to go both ways. Now, when we ground, we don't need to be calm. And it also doesn't need to take forever. Again, there's that concept that people, and no shade, if you like to meditate for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, 2-hour meditation, 1 hour yoga, a 30-minute cold plunge, if you love that routine, go for it. I am so stoked that you found something that works for you. I'm a mom. I work, I have pets, I have a partner, I've got family. I don't have an infinite amount of time at this point in my life to do countless hours of things like that. So sometimes that regulation process is a singular breath, not an hour. Other times, when I've peopled a lot, now again, I love people, okay? But also, people can throw their stuff on you, usually subconsciously. They don't realize it. I'm open to listening. I want to be a support structure for people because it's not something that I had. There's not an agenda there. They just deserve for somebody to listen to them. And I'm here for that. And if I'm not, I will let them know that. But sometimes if I've been to like a convention or something where there's just been constant input, I might need to go spend an hour and take a walk in the forest and just be around the trees and the birds and the quiet. And that's really rejuvenating for me. But if I'm in the middle of dinner and I've got my dogs wrestling and one kiddo trying to show me a magic trick and another one is upset because his this specific thing didn't get washed when he said he was going to do the laundry and he needs it right now, and so many, and then the phone's ringing and I'm cooking, and it gets overwhelming. So sometimes in practicing those micro moments of grounding, sometimes you need just a big breath. There have been times where I tell my family, okay, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Sensorily speaking, I'm at a 10. Give me literally 5 seconds of quiet. And they go, okay. And that's another thing. When you are more grounded on a regular basis, first of all, you don't need the super long sessions to come back to yourself. Secondly, when you say you need it and you can show the people around you how that works, they might start using it rather than you lecturing them and trying to convince them. And when you can communicate that you need that, they are so open to facilitating that. It's hard when I've got 20 things going on in the house and people who need me to be like, all right, I'm tapped. I'm going to go spend 30 minutes and take a really long shower. And they're like, but dinner's cooking. There are moments as a mom, as a human, that you can't just drop it and exit the situation. And that's why being able to ground, being able to take the breath, to find a sensory input, sometimes I'll fidget with my ring, touching my chest, letting me know that I'm here. Those small practices can have huge payouts. And so now understanding that the myths of grounding with the having to be still, having to empty the mind, suppressing the emotions, getting calm instantly, those all don't work. And neither does self-regulation if it's done, I don't want to say the wrong way. Okay, so let's think of self-regulation. Self-regulation, similar to grounding. So somebody says, I need to regulate. Your nervous system is giving you cues for a reason. Okay, what does regulation actually mean? It means grounding. It means stability in yourself and the ability to respond rather than react. Self-regulation can be very tricky because it's often taught as a term which is communicated that you need to override your needs in order to function. So it comes back to what's actually going on inside of me. Why am I feeling elevated? And not the stories. That is a huge key in self-regulation and grounding. To say oh, I'm mad because they said this, and now I feel this way. And then it becomes this justification loop of why you're feeling this way and why this elevated emotion is happening and how it makes so much sense. And does it make sense? Yeah, absolutely. You've had the life experiences that have led you to this point with the stories and the conditioning. We're usually not at this point of being adults, most of us are not living who we are externally. Most of us don't even know who we actually are. We remember like vague remnants of when we were a kid and how we used to feel and how we used to behave and what we used to think, and this like magic and wonder and whimsy that we had about life. And now we're just angry all the time, or now we're crying all the time and nothing really feels good. And we go from 0 to 60 in like a split second. And it's those moments that like, it's not about regulation in the ways that people are saying, like, oh, you just need to calm down. You just need to learn to accept. You just need to, keep your emotions in check so that they're not affecting other people. Sometimes those other people need to know that they're affecting you. Not in a way that's blaming them, maybe, but in a way of saying, like, hey, when you said this, I took it this way. First of all, is that what you mean? I love the what did you say, what did I hear tool. I heard you say, and it's usually not when we say it back, it's usually not the exact words they said. It's our version of it because it's the story, the emotions that are attached to our past that's bringing up something similar in this moment that is bringing up an emotion, whether that's anger, rage, grief, that usually has something deeper. And so it's not suppress the emotion, keep yourself in check. It's understand what's going on. And how can you feel safe for yourself to discover that, to reflect on that? This is what I understood. How can I communicate better? Exactly. And a lot of times words have connotations, right? I found that for a while in my relationship that, I would say something. Now, intention does not negate impact. It's one of my favorite sayings. Just because I didn't mean to hurt you with what I said doesn't mean that it didn't hurt. But if my partner communicates back what they took and I go, oh, okay, that's not what I meant. Thank you for letting me know that. I'm so sorry that I affected you that way. Let me try to communicate better on what's actually going on for me right now. And in doing that, your relationship grows, usually because you're communicating better with that person specifically. You're not feeling so misunderstood. And the fight or flight, or sometimes fawn response gets to come down. Our guard, our walls get to come down. We get to be ourselves authentically without causing harm. And we will naturally have boundaries. Naturally. It's like I've heard the example, like, I can't versus I won't. Like, I can't take the way you're talking to me right now. I can't do it. That's makes you the victim right there. And I say that with love. Like, oh, I can't do this. Like, when you say I can't, that means you're throwing in the towel, right? Feel the way if you say right now out loud, I'll invite you because I can't hear you. If you say, I can't deal with this right now, like, how does your body feel? Do you feel like you have power in the situation? Or do you feel like you are going to get taken over? And I noticed that a while ago. And so I stopped saying, I can't hear you say that. I can't whatever. And instead, I started saying, I won't. I will not accept being called names. I will not accept being disrespected. I love you. I hear you say you love me. What you're doing right now feels disrespectful. We can communicate better. And I will not accept less than that. And that is not putting the bar way up here, right? It is bare minimum to be spoken to as a human. So when those words have a connotation, I might say, somebody might be going on and on and on and on and on because they're feeling elevated and they're really angry. And then, they just want you to listen, but then they get mad because you haven't responded. And I might say something along the lines of, well, I didn't want to interrupt your monologue. Now, per my body language and my tone, it might be read that that's just the word that I used for the defined word of monologue, somebody speaking at length, uninterrupted. But they might take monologue as an insult. What did you say? What did I hear? And vice versa. Now, monologue can be taken really offensively if somebody's really elevated and they have a negative connotation on a word. And inversely, you might receive a word from them that doesn't feel very nice. So when you're grounded and you're mindful of that, now it doesn't even always have to be a word. Sometimes it's a tone. 7% of language is the actual words we use. All of the rest of it is tone and body language. But that's a fun one that I tell my kids. Sometimes I remind them of that one. I wasn't being rude. Well, you may not have intended to be rude, but when you go, well, you're talking to me, you're definitely communicating rude. So being able to be mindful of how you're feeling, what you're receiving, the stories that are going on that are causing you to react can make you feel dysregulated, can make you feel what I like to use better is outside of your window of tolerance. So when you say this is my window of things that I know I can handle, we're going to come up here sometimes where things are really elevated. We're going to come down here sometimes where things are really kind of depressed, sad. So when we're up here, we might be outside of that window of what we know we can manage. And we can say, okay, I'm here. What are the tools that I have without needing to run away, without needing to react in a way that's defensive or attacking or coming from ego? And how can I bring myself back in my window so that I can respond? Does that make sense? Sometimes it's a breath. Sometimes it's, texture on the hands. Sometimes I love the dive technique, where if you're feeling, it's a beautiful one for anxiety, putting your head, if you've got a shower and you're feeling brave, go for it, throw your whole body in it. But if you put your face and the back of your neck in cold water for 30 seconds, your nervous system comes out. Comes out of that fight or flight response. If you're feeling like you have a big anxiety attack happening right now, heart palpitations, quick breathing, your eyes are darting all over the place and you don't know what to do, go put your head in some cold water. 30 seconds. That regulates you. That grounds you. And it grounds you because it's bringing you back into your body. And that is the actual, if we're looking at this from a perspective of what is and is not grounding, grounding is actually reclaiming yourself in the present moment, being in your body. What is the sensation under my feet? What is the pressure and texture of the clothes on my body? What is the air temperature? Is there a breeze? Do I have tight muscles? Am I tensing up because I'm stressed? Coming back into the body. Coming back into yourself in a way of saying, if I communicate this, Am I communicating authentically to me, or am I communicating from a place of defensiveness, of fear, of anger? Are my walls up? There's a difference there. And we're not going to have it right all the time. Like, we are human, as far as I'm aware. So, in relationships, whether you're a parent, a partner, and even with yourself, it is not about getting it right 100% of the time. Part of relationships is damage and repair, of acknowledging that we're human. We're going to say and do things that even we don't agree with, and we can acknowledge that we did not behave in a way that was authentic to our hearts and ourselves. And we take accountability for that from a grounded space, and we come back and we repair the situation with an authentic apology. We figure out what we can do better in the future for ourselves and for our partner, our children, whomever it is. And the more we can show up for ourselves in the present moment, one of my favorite meditation techniques, let me know. I want to hear if you actually, if you see how this is a meditation technique, because most people hear meditation and they think sitting quietly and emptying the mind. Meditation to me is being in the moment. And one of my favorite techniques is washing the dishes. Now, as a chore in general, dishes are not my favorite thing. However, while I'm washing the dishes, I can bring myself into the moment exactly with sensory input. What is the temperature of the water? How hard is the water pouring on my hands? What is the sound of the water on the plate? What is the texture of the sponge on the plate? Can I feel the grit of the food underneath the sponge? Being so immersed in this moment. If we think of grounding and mindfulness in other activities in our lives, if you have kids or partners or parents or whomever that you plan a birthday party for, a lot of times when we are not grounded in ourselves, we put tons of hours in a birthday party, into a wedding, into any kind of event or gathering. And then the entire time that it's happening, we're running around, so worried. Our minds are so busy trying to figure out what's going on, what's going wrong, what do we need to correct, what do we need to do. And then at the end of the event, everybody's like, oh, that was so great or whatever. And you're sitting there going, what even happened? Like, I felt like I was hit by a Mack truck. A train just went by. Where did 6 hours go? I didn't even eat or drink water, like, because you weren't present in that moment. You were living in anxiety. You were living in fear. You are living in your head. So to be grounded is to reclaim who you are, to have conversations where you are focused, where you can say, oh, I understand that this needs to be taken care of. And instead of going to it from a place of panic to address it, I can respond. I love the visual of like a queen. Okay. Especially if we talk about this in terms of women's reclamation. A queen is not somebody. There is a princess and there is a queen. The princess is going to say, I want everything to be taken care of. Things aren't going my way. Let me get you in trouble. Make this perfect for me. A queen is going to say, things aren't going my way. We'll take care of it. It's going to work out because I know how to handle it. And furthermore, I know how to handle myself. That is grounding. Moving through the world, moving through each moment in present awareness, so in line with yourself. And that does not have to look like it does for any other person. That's one of the reasons why I am not a fan of these like courses all the time that are so generalized. Do they have things that are helpful? Absolutely. They will have things in there that are going to help. You're going to find at least one little nugget that gets you closer to where you want to be. But do you know where you want to be? Because do you know who you are and how to move through the world from that place? We can't manifest. We can't imagine the person we want to be if our systems are stuck in the past. So as we ground, as we come into alignment and mindfulness and presence, you are reclaiming who you are and opening up space to become, to step into, to embody. And that is such a beautiful and powerful place to be. Now, power over, that's where there are some practitioners who talk about like the levels of consciousness or the levels of divine in an archetype. But if you look at it as like, am I pitching a fit to get what I want? Am I accepting not getting what I want, but really I'm secretly annoyed about it, and later on I'm going to do something spiteful or passive aggressive? Or am I so in touch with who I am that even if I don't have the things that I want right now, I can be content and comfortable, and I can find the ways to get to what I want? That is grounded presence. And that's what I want for everybody in the world who isn't manipulative and trying to hurt other people. I have to put that caveat in there. So does that make sense? I want to open the floor to questions, especially, regarding grounding and mindfulness, but anything in like the reclamation space. Now, I know I went on a whole long spiel, but I want to make sure if you're feeling uncertain or unclear about something, like what has your experience been with feeling regulated, with feeling grounded, with not knowing where you want to go? And even in understanding like what you thought grounding was versus what you understand it to be now, or Andy, you said earlier with self-regulation, does that make more sense? Is about being emotionally honest in who you are, right? Because if you're not speaking to the other person in an interaction, because unless you're going around talking to just yourself all the time, and even then we have ways of gaslighting ourselves. Like when somebody says, I'm never angry, or I'm just not an angry person, you have anger inside of you, and it's healthy to acknowledge that. 100%. Okay, so, but to be honest about that with yourself and then with others is so, so important. Because otherwise you're not grounding anything, you're not being centered, you're not being authentic, you are bypassing, you're gaslighting yourself and other people. And if we don't want to be gaslit, we need to be able to listen to ourselves so that we can identify it in other people as well.